Hi everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. We've got quite an interesting show for you today, but we'll just go around and introduce the panel first. I'm joined by my co-host Jason from watchrolling.com.
Hello.
We're joined by another Todd. We're going to refer to him as Todd V, and he's from @TikTok Talk on Instagram.
Hello, everybody.
We've got Pete from Not So Obvious Watches, although I noticed you'd changed your channel name, so we'll perhaps ask you about that later. And then we've got Todd from Seiko Chronograph, Seiko Forum fame. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. Well, should we do a quick wristwatch check then? Should we just kick off with that? We'll go with Todd V first. You're the guest. What are you wearing? Let me put you on full screen here.
I am still in love with, and in the try not to get the I don't know. There we go. The Christopher Ward, the Lucerne Blue, the Sealander. And my dog wanted to chime in on that too.
Absolutely. Awesome. Todd, what's on your wrist?
Well, I just took this off. It's a Garmin just earlier because I was working in the basement. But what I've had on Sunday here most of the day is the Mont Blanc. So I had the Mont Blanc, Nicholas Ryasek.
Very nice.
Mono pusher, GMT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Pete, what are you wearing?
I've learnt my lesson. I take it off now. I've got this 1990s vintage Gerard Perregaux Traveler 7000.
Nice.
Kind of a GMT watch, in that it is a GMT, but it's not a true GMT. The hour hand is just slaved. The 24 and main hour hand is slaved next to each other. You can't set them independently.
Yeah, we need to talk about this on the show once, because there's been a lot of this true GMT and bezel thing talk going around, and I don't know whether it's. I think I understand what it is, but I'm not 100% sure. I think a true maybe we'll do it now. A true GMT is where the hour hand of the GMT or the GMT hand, sorry, moves independently of the other hands.
That's how I read it. So the first GMTs, the hour hand and the GMT hand were basically locked in place. They were slaved together. The only difference is the GMT hand ran at half speed. So it took 24 hours to do the full cycle. The only way, therefore, and the reason why it's not a true GMT movement is because the movement can't show you a second time zone. The only way you can achieve that is by having a bezel that gives you a different reference. So that's an untrue GMT. And then what happened was Rolex came up with a way of separating the two and having, so you can set the GMT and local hours separately. And that was a true GMT. And then when ETA started introducing like more affordable options on the forums, it looks like, if you go back to the Wayback Machine and look at the old forum posts, it looks like a lot of, frankly, Rolex snobs repurposed the definition of true to now mean like Rolex. And that's why you end up with true GMTs being used for just a subsection of movements that are capable of showing GMT and local hours separately.
Right. Like this is a true GMT. If you want to focus in, I can show you to what Pete was saying. If I can always get it, it's always a trick to get it lined up. But as I turn, you can see I can set the hour hand. See how it snaps? And there's my GMT hand, which I just cross over the way Mont Blanc did it. It's a little bit out of focus. I'm holding it too close. Is they put a skeleton GMT hand that'll hide underneath the hour hand if you want it to. And you can see there it comes out. And it's really well thought out. But that's how this works. So yeah, this is a true GMT, quote unquote true GMT, which I'm not necessarily a fan of that expression necessarily either.
Well, that to go along with that, the term they call this one is called. Gee, I can't with the camera.
I know you had to think opposite.
It's this is a caller GMT is what they're calling it now. So instead of the jump hour, the GMT hand is what jumps per hour.
Yes.
So this is one that's for the desk GMT versus the traveler GMT.
Right.
Yeah.
My glycine has exactly the same mechanism you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's based on that ETA 2834. I've forgotten the designation, but yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the beauty of that one is if you're at your desk, but you're tracking, I like to call those ones trackers, but you're tracking someone else that's moving, it's very easy to move their time and keep yours stable. If you're traveling, you kind of want one that does the other so that your home time stays pretty stable, but it's easy to change where you're going.
Right.
So I've got 12 GMTs and it's a mixture of all of them. So,
oh wow.
I use mine to track the F1 start times, so I know the GMT time of the F1 race.
I use mine to track these kind of streams, and also bicycle racing.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Ah.
Well, Jason, what's on your wrist?
I'm just wearing something that's only got a date complication, so I'm probably underdressed.
Is it a true date?
It's a true date.
True date complication?
Yes, I can move the date forwards, backwards, and sideways based on what part of the time-space continuum I'm in. It's my Zodiac Zulu Oscar 9271.
Yeah, like
compression case. Yes.
Nice.
I love it.
Very handsome.
It's snazzy. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's a well-built,
beautiful.
Nice watch. Yeah, it's my first two-tones, my first gold of any kind, even though it's like super gold, but I'm digging it.
Awesome. And then I'm wearing, I put the little Seiko back on the speed timer. I'm wearing it on a Man Cave leather bun strap, which McCullough at Man Cave Leather specially made for me. He's hopefully going to get McCullough on the show next week because he's going to start up Man Cave Leather again. And there's a real fascinating story about how he makes his leather straps. So, yeah, I'm wearing the little speed timer, although I've been wearing the Rolex most of the week. And Todd, I too have been wearing the Garmin today. So there you go. Let's see who we've got in the chat. Evening Batch Qatar. Nice for you to join us. Kevin says, "How is the weather over there?"
Over where?
Exactly. we're not several different time zones. I think the weather is fair, or about to rain if it's Florida, where I am. Awesome. Well, yeah. Greetings, everyone. Well. Today, we've got a few things on the bar menu to discuss. You saw the thumbnail, which I'll just show up. Night Wristwatchman, who's in the chat. Evening Palm. Palm is the artist who's been doing the thumbnails the last couple of episodes. So thanks, Palm. So on the bar menu tonight, we have Is Hodinkee Dead? ? Can you make the perfect watch for your fans? And this is one that I've been thinking a lot about this week when I dropped my brand new Christopher Ward review, which if you haven't seen, check it out. And then we've got Geneva Watch Day predictions. So let's start with, we'll go from top to bottom. So is Hodinkee dead? And Pete, I'll start with you because you made the video on this. So maybe we need to go into a bit of background about. Obviously, it's a clickbait title, but we'll go into a bit of background.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. First off, on clickbait, I blame the viewers. If they stopped clicking, I'd stop throwing the chum in the water. But it works. Okay, so what just recently happened is Jack Forster, the long-standing editor of Hodinkee, the face of a lot of their high-end watch loving, if you like, has moved and left and gone across to Watchbox. And that on its own might not be that meaningful, except he comes at the end of losing Stephen Pulverant, losing Cara Barrett. They've changed their relationship with the Grey NATO guy so that that's not quite the same as it was. And what they've been bringing in are a lot of new folk with very little journalist and in many cases, no journalistic background. A lot of people with style backgrounds, more general kind of fashion backgrounds. And you can see that in their watch coverage. that it's becoming increasingly what watch to wear while wearing a pizza. I mean, if I give you these titles, 5 reasons why your next watch should be pink, or why are Kanye, Tyler, and Bad Bunny all wearing ladies' watches? The 90s watches we want to see brought back. They all sound like current Hodinkee titles. If you saw those on Hodinkee, you wouldn't be shocked at all.
Yeah.
Those are titles from the Mr. Porter watch area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're watching is Hodinkee as a watch site die, and it's becoming a Mr. Porter style sales channel that just happens to have content. Funnily enough, if you go to the Hodinkee section, they have a journal at the Hodinkee website. They actually now have a journal section which has what to wear and what to take with you. Not even about watches, what to wear while you go on holiday, what kind of holidays to go on. It's almost like they've been sitting down watching the Mr. Porter site, trying to figure out where they're going to go. So, yeah, I just think that is Hodinkee dying? No, it's going to do great. It's going to make people a lot of money. But if you're the sort of person who used to go to Hodinkee pretty much every day to see what was going on with watches and where we're going, it's not that anymore. And what I would say is, like, my normal videos, but after this period of time, a normal video of mine would get maybe 2 or 3, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000 views. This one at the moment is running at 7,500 views, and there's not a single, and 500 comments, and there's not a single comment that said, no, I think Hodinkee is great. I love what it's doing. Not a single one.
Yeah, Todd V, you look like you're about to dive in there with your thoughts.
I'm torn, and I think Pete sort of touched on it, and I don't want to name names, but I think there's another very prominent watch YouTuber who seems to have, for the last year, shifted into, I'm more of a salesperson than a reviewer person, and I'm really pushing product. And I think Hodinkee is kind of, it feels like they're going down that same path, although I still enjoy their content. And I even have the Hodinkee insurance for some of my watches, so hopefully they don't go too far. I don't want them to go underwater.
Yeah, I think cheers, Adrian. So yeah, Adrian puts, I think the good days of Hodinkee are long gone. We're just seeing the big fallout from their team. Yeah, I think you're right there. And Todd, we won't mention that. We won't mention that other YouTuber, but Teddy knows what he did.
Just right out there. All right.
That escalated quickly.
I think Pete, one of the really interesting things I think from your video, and I feel this totally as well, was that you likened it back to BC, the years of BC, which was before clock. Which,
yeah,
you're totally right. Which was before. I don't know if newer watch collectors will know about the Hodinkee travel clock, but you were right. I think this is when the tides kind of turned, didn't it? And then they went for a long time very silly with their limited editions after this. But this was the real catalyst of, I think, people's changing opinions on Hodinkee. I like the way you kind of worded this.
I think I remember at the time, I think all these sites in the back of our minds, we know they're selling us stuff. We know they're a shop, but we want them to we want to be able to, as they say, maintain a willing suspension of disbelief. We want to see enough kind of distance between the shop and the editorial that we can sort of buy in, and Hodinkee go further, and they wanted to have this sense of community and we're in it with you and all that sort of thing. And I think the travel clock just ripped the curtain away, and we saw the little man on the we saw the Wizard of Oz exposed on the with the megaphone, and we're just going, oh, this isn't this isn't what
Todd
we
S
wanted.
knows my face by now. I got a hot take on this. I want to start personally saying, when I started collecting, I looked at Hodinkee, and when they started doing, like, this is going to sound really funny, but when they started doing the, like, almost like charcoal ink sketches of their authors or contributors, at first I was like, oh, sweet, maybe Hodinkee's kind of like the Wall Street Journal for watches. You know, you can go in there and read some respectable journalism, and, you know, people having sources, and I was like, okay, cool. So maybe that's something to aspire to. When I was a little kid, I looked at the Wall Street Journal like, you only saw really cool dudes sitting outside coffee shops reading the Wall Street Journal. Like, I never saw anyone in my family reading the Wall Street Journal, but I aspired to that. I quickly found out it was kind of like that, but it was going away from that. But here's my hot take. Okay. Todd S will know what I'm talking about. And you will too, Pete, even though you're in Australia. So maybe you have a certain career, like say you're in the military for 20 years and you get out and you go straight into the government, or you go to a contracting company, right? And then when you're done with your contracting company or the government, because you retire from the government, now you go into a contracting gig, right? But you're in this small little niche area and you meander through because it's all like part of the tree of life, right? You all need each other to exist. You all need it. It's the same reason they put a Rite Aid and a CVS across the street from each other, right? So if anyone thinks that Mr. Forster leaving Hodinkee's a bad thing, and by going to Watchbox, they're sorely mistaken. He's moving from one entity to another. Hodinkee's going to obviously go younger. That's what they're trying to do, right? Because the people they started with have advanced in age, right? And when you get older, and I'm going to tell you just for me as a guy who's 47, I don't care who knows my age, I think it's kind of cool because I go to Watchbox. I'm getting Tim Mosso's short and sweet videos to the point. These are the watches. I'm learning some stuff. Jack Forster does some cool stuff, like older guy story stuff, and I'm cool with it. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that they bank on the fact that we're going to talk about this stuff. But I feel like, even though I've never been in the watch industry, quote unquote, it smells an awful lot like the defense contracting industry. It smells a lot like it. You do your time in one area, you branch out and go to another area, and if you're good enough, then you get to come back around for another tour in another area. And then one day you get old and you die and you don't earn any more money. That's what it feels like to me. You know?
Adrian, thank you so much for joining. Oh, you're on mute there. You're on mute there. Yeah. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh, Adrian, you're on mute.
Yeah, no.
He probably has great points too.
Yeah,
I know. I'm dying to hear what he has to say. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a little button that I have to press on my. Sorry, I'm late, guys. Sorry, mate, and muted. But this is an awesome topic because I run a YouTube channel, and over the time I've kind of got to meet a lot of guys within the industry, both from Hodinkee and just normal press publications, newspapers, GQ, Esquire, those sorts of guys. And it's absolutely Pete. I saw your video about Hodinkee, and I agreed with everything you said about him. I thought you're absolutely spot on. My big thing about what I think is going to happen is I feel there's a decline in the traditional media, and I think the media is going to. Sorry, not the media. I think our consumption of watch information is going to be decentralized, and it's going to be more YouTuber channels. It's going to be more individual blogs. I've got friends who I follow on Instagram, and they're just starting their own blogs. They don't need to be the next Hodinkee. They're just sharing their thoughts. And we don't have to follow one big beacon light of this is where all the information's from, because whatever happens, these things grow into massive corporations because the money is just too tasty. The amount of money that I've turned down for my channel is painful because the money is just out there. I'm talking houses that I could have bought with the amount of money that I've turned down, and it takes a real focus to walk away from that sort of stuff. So from one side, it's sad to see what's happened to Hodinkee, but on the other side, Hodinkee's not going to be around forever. Ben Climb doesn't want to do this forever. He wants to make his money and go out. He wants to sell up and move on. So it kind of makes sense. But I think, as we all are here, this is the future of watch media, is individual people who aren't paid to say certain things. They have the pure freedom to say whatever they like, talk about whatever they like. And I think that is the pure downfall of Hodinkee. Sorry, I just went on.
Yeah, and I think it, for that, I would love that to be the future, and I so hope that Adrian's right, because I'd like to get some more subs at some point. But one of the things that I suppose that concerns me is I would love to see the watch industry mature as well to take that view, and so for the watch industry to realize that having a YouTuber yell at one of our watches is not the end of the day. You know what? We will still send them watches. We will still engage with people. We won't demand. Now, I've got very little engagement with a lot of watch companies, but we won't demand that we get to see the copy first, or that they only say nice things. And if they shit on this watch, they'll still let the next one. They'll still send us the next one. I think if you got that situation, which, by the way, a lot of car companies are in with magazines, they don't have a choice, then I think you're approaching a really healthy environment, which is better for the consumer. It's better for us. It's better for the watch companies. It's just a better system all around. But at the moment, I think they're still too thin-skinned, too averse to anyone saying anything remotely negative. And I worry that we're going to have this period of people like me, outsiders, trying to guess what's happening inside organizations, not getting a lot of access. But we're the best news, we're the best resource that consumers have got. Yeah. And that's not the best place to be.
But you know what, Pete? I'm going to tell you what, nice to meet you, Adrian. I'm Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Welcome. Thanks for joining. So I've been collecting for about 3 years, and I'm retired military. And initially, I would go do deep dives and just search channels and publications to try to learn as much about watches as I could, so I didn't get burnt in purchasing something. And over the last 3 years, as I've gotten to know all these guys that are watch enthusiasts, my if it's a graph, the amount of information I go and seek online has started to meet in the middle with what I just asked. I asked guys like Todd S. or Pete or Sam or Miguel from SoCal Watch. These gentlemen that I know that I've developed personal relationships with. So I think that the media stuff like Hodinkee will always be there for people that want to find something quick. Maybe they're not so much interested in the timepiece as they are in the story behind the timepiece or what the timepiece represents or something. But I think if the media is going to go to these live streams and where people are talking, I think that my progression's kind of been a natural turn into that, because I go to you guys now most of the time for any question I have. I mean, we were talking about that Kickstarter watch. I went and asked you the difference between that Rondo 150 and the ETA 2824 Tech 2. And you guys gave me more information than I would have got from any, and I even went to Caliber Corner and stuff. So I think it's just, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if you're really interested in super journalism, it is. But I think at the same time, Hodinkee is going to become something for a certain group of people, and Watchbox will become something slightly different for another group of people. And then we'll still have our interpersonal relationships like this to draw on and to grow.
I think it's a tricky time, though. I think that everybody sort of touched on the issue of you turn into this democratization, right, of the media, and the big Hodinkee and the watch companies are afraid of that. And this happened 20 years ago with the music industry, and you went through this huge ebb of oh, now it's going to be great because we can deliver direct to consumer. But now that model still has gotten ugly and messy for the musicians. Yeah. So I'm curious, we're probably in this sort of painful evolution of how this information gets put out there. And I think it's going to require people like this group of people right here who are willing to say, I just want to do a channel for the love of the information. And I'm not necessarily saying, oh, I've got to start a career out of this, because once the money's there, everything gets messy.
Yeah, I agree. When I'm chatting to new YouTubers that start, I always liken the first time you monetize to that sketch in Monty Python, The Life of Brian, where he's kind of running through the market stall, and he's he's trying to buy the fake beard, and he's I'll throw in this gourd and then negotiating, and then he's no, I'll give you 10 for the gourd. He's 10 for this gourd? It's worth more than that. It's well, you were going to give it me free. It's yes, but now you're going to buy it. And I feel like that's the early days of monetization, isn't it? Because you're happy doing the content for like the love of it, and then YouTube's like, oh, well, that video you spent 8 hours on, you were happy to do it free. Now I'm going to pay you $2 for it. And you're like, oh, it's 8 hours of my life. When they actually put like a finance to it, which is, I always find that funny. But what's everyone's view on on particularly Jack Forster going to Watchbox? Because they've dabbled in a few other celebrities, haven't they? They had Federico, they obviously had TGV for a year, and those relationships seem to either fizzle out quickly or not get renewed. So
yeah, my feeling is that Jack does two things for Watchbox. The first is they've got two channels. So there's Watchbox Reviews, which is those quick and dirty things. Park that. Jack's got nothing to do with that. Then the other one is Watchbox Studios, where they have longer form chatting type things. So I think Jack will go in there and there'll be the longer form. This is what's happening with this independent and why it's cool, and different kinds of engueulage or whatever he's going to talk about. But I think the other thing that Jack brings is a point of difference for Watchbox as a community. I'll put it this way. I'm a premium member of my sporting team in Melbourne. I belong to what's called a coterie, and where a group of us get together. We pay a little bit more every year, but we get to go to special events. And most importantly, really important ex-players, ex-clubs, ex-coaches come down and they have dinner with us, and they put their arms around us and they tell us what things that no one else knows about what's going on in the industry, etc. And it's kind of cool. I can see Jack as a kind of coterie leader for people who are buying $200,000 watches from Watchbox. So you get involved in that community, and you'll get involved. You buy high-end pieces from Watchbox and only Watchbox, and you'll get invited to the Watchbox booth at Dubai Watch Week, and you'll get escorted to places by Jack Forster, and I can see them trying to build that. And if I'm someone like Watchbox, and I don't have to compete with Roman Scarf, for example, on price, but instead I can just offer a celebrity experience with Jack Forster, I'm making more money. And I've only got to sell, like at that level, Jack's only got to sell maybe an extra 10 watches, and he's paid his salary. And I can see him having that kind of role with that industry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's the LeBron James now over there at Watchbox. Like
that's right.
They scalped him, and they brought up the legitimate factor of Watchbox. Now Watchbox is going to be, we're at Hodinkee level now, and everything shifts from that perspective. But that now those fans are going to jump over there to pay attention to what's happening over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they pair him with Tim Mosso. To your point, I think there's a lot more value. Like when we watch, TV talk shows or whatever, you don't usually get one person. You get, because you want that chemistry. You want to be able to kind of work and play off of each other. So we see that in the morning shows. We see that. You see that even on radio. Seldom is there one person. It's usually two people, and they go back and forth. And watching Jack and Tim, I think together might be really good. Because you have this insane ability to remember facts and be able to just get them out very quickly. Because Tim is kind of like this too. He tends to be, like, calm down. Just, I'm watching him, and I have to whoa, I need to take a step back because of what you're putting out there. But then Jack seems much more reflective, much more of like the color commentator would be on Monday Night Football. So you got the guys on Monday Night Football that can just, oh yeah, so and so did this. They got this many tackles, and they came. And then you got the color commentary, which kind of adds that dimension that you really need to make it enjoyable for the viewer. And I think they did a good job. I think with Jack there, with the resources that Watchbox has, I think it's going to be pretty good. We'll see. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how it goes.
I really like Pete's comment in your video about how Tim Mosso is very much a factual person. He'll tell you the stats on a watch and what's going on inside, and perhaps some of the history about it, but rarely share any opinion on the watch. And he's shared that he doesn't want to share his opinion because it's rather meaningless. But ultimately, we're interested in that stuff. Whereas Jack is he's not the opposite, but he does very much. He's a journalist, so he will share his opinion. He will compare something with something else, and then put his take on whether something is a good offering or not. So it is a good addition, although they do have very similar. Thanks, my audio is low apparently. They do have similar mindsets around watches. One thing with Watchbox is that and I guess something around Hodinkee as well, is that they've really highlighted the power of content and how content sells watches. And with Watchbox, they've controversially hyped up previously underperforming brands to the point of being high-performing brands now. Brands that they've had some control over, and Jack can most certainly help with that trajectory of continuing that momentum, especially with his celebrity and his knowledge of watches. And you're right. Imagine buying a watch through Jack Forster now that he's got his heritage so widely broadcasted on the internet within the community. It's a very powerful offering. I have no inside information on what went on, but I wonder, given the very quick transition of Jack Forster and an addition of 5 new people, I wonder if Jack left or if he was asked to leave, because I can imagine a Jack salary might pay for 5 junior, inexperienced journalists to join the team, and then suddenly imagine how much more productive the team could be with 5 new people. 5 new fresh people compared to one more vintage.
And what if 3 of those people were like young Tim Massos, where all they're doing is banging out the stats? I mean, think about that. You know what I mean? You have 3 people doing the work of one guy, and they just push the data up so Jack can write his stories, and he just fills in with the narrative. You know, he's not looking up specs. He's not looking up, how it was tested. He's not looking up any of that stuff, because you got some analyst, quote unquote, doing that kind of stuff. I think that's the thing to remember with a lot of this stuff is, like, we get these stories and we look at like the top 1/2 inch that's on top of the water, right? We don't realize how their organization's built. We don't know how their structure's built. We don't know who they have there are people that are in key leadership positions that are making decisions saying, yeah, this is what we want to show everybody, but this is what bolsters what we're showing. They might have a foundation built out of concrete and steel, and what we think is it's all fluff up there, but they have a plan. And they've, I know Pete knows these other guys. They've project managed that stuff going way out, right? And they're not just doing this stuff by the seat of their pants, I don't think. And I think a lot of times, a lot of us instantly think that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, we've got some good comments here. A lot of people commented, so thanks for that. Should we move on to our next topic then? Next topic I had here was, can you make the perfect watch for your fans? Now, the reason that I did this, or reason that this comment came up, is because Christopher Ward released a new watch this week, and what they did is they surveyed their forum. And if you watch my review, you'll know that Mike France talks about how they incorporated a lot of the suggestions from the forum into that dive watch. And it's weird when you review a Christopher Ward watch, because there's a lot, more than any other brand, there's a lot of opinions on directions they should have taken. And I'll just show a few of these comments that I had. So, and they're not bad comments. It's just funny that I've obscured everyone's name except for Canadian Watch Monkey, because you should check his channel out. So that's a little plug for him. But they're examples of things like they put a sapphire case back on it because the forum had said, oh, we'd really like to see the movement. But then you've got several people that are saying, well, I wish they'd put the closed case back on this new watch that they had on the previous one. But my favorite one is this one down here, which is, now that they took the name Christopher Ward off the dial, I wish it was back. So it's kind of like everyone was like, oh, I don't like the name. And then they replaced the name with the logo. And now people are like, oh, actually, I did like it. So I guess this isn't a specific to Christopher Ward here, but can you make, as a watch company, can you make the fans of your brand happy with trying to make a watch based on their feedback? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
You'll never get.
Sorry, you go, Rick.
Okay. You'll never.
Sorry, go on, Pete.
Only if you only make one watch and you sell it to a complete homogenous group of people who don't have any differing opinions. But as soon as you sell two watches, which are in any way different from each other, then you're going to have a community that splits a little bit. And no matter what you do next, someone's going to like some and someone's going to like the other. So I think that, no, it is impossible to make a watch that makes everyone happy. And, in accordance with our little back chat that was happening, on the Discord channel, I think the harder you try, and particularly the more you ask, the further away you're going to get from a watch that anyone truly loves.
I'll take a different stab at it. I think it's impossible to get, obviously, satisfaction from 100% of the people. But I like what Christopher Ward's doing from the standpoint, if you're from a sales perspective, there's an 80-20 rule. And, when you have all these customers, 20% of your customers will take 80% of your time, meaning they're going to be complaining, they're going to be annoying. Those are the ones you throw out with the dishwater. Just get rid of them. But 80% of the people are going to be very happy. So using that methodology that he was using, where I'm going to ask people what they want, you're going to get a bulk who love it. And then you're going to always have the complainers. It's, that's just part of it, but you'll never get 100% buy-in. But if you get 80% of those people who are like, I love this watch and I'm going to buy it, it's a win.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, so in the Navy, we have a saying when we fight fires, bro, you're just trying to be 80% effective. Like if you're trying to fight the perfect fire or fight the damage perfectly, your ship's going to sink. Like you need to get it stopped, and then you need to be able to do repairs later, right? And that's why, I always joke, but people either love Rolex or poo-poo Rolex, right? Bro, they got that 80% figured out, and they've had it figured out for decades. They make incremental little changes, right? Like it's like 0.5 degrees on the plane, and they don't end up a million miles away. I just think that who your core audience is. If you've done any kind of research from your own company, you know what changes you can make. And some companies just do it better than others, but you can make mistakes by listening a little too much, because not often the most vocal people are the majority. It doesn't happen all the time.
True. Yeah. I suppose what's interesting as well is, it particular to Christopher Ward, is maybe it's because people care so much about the brand that they really think they're making comments about things that would change, but it's because if they were indifferent about it, they would I can't. I'm not even that bothered to even think of a tweak. So I suppose that's good. But a couple of the comments I've replied back to, where people are like, oh, what do you think of it? And I'm like, I think this is the best. This isn't a plug for Christopher Ward. I think this is the best watch under $1,000 that I've reviewed. The way that they've done it, the way that they've tweaked it, the way that it's evolved. But it's always funny that, especially the comments where they didn't like something, so Christopher Ward took it off, and then then now they wish that it was back. I suppose that's quite.
How did they go about it? What was it? I think the short answer is no. You can't do that. Yeah. But how did they go about it? Was it a poll? Did they say you can have this or that, like case back, open or close, vote? Or
what might this is a great thing. So Christopher Ward is so open as much as they can be as a business, obviously, but they've got a forum, an independent forum that's not linked to them, a Christopher Ward fans forum, and they said to them, we're thinking of it's an evolution of their C600, their marquee dive watch, I would say. And they said to the forum, hey, we're thinking of doing this next version, but don't tell us what you want. Tell us what your ideal dive watch is. So they basically the forum came together and produced basically a research study for the Christopher Ward team. Said these are the 4 things that we want that we would want in dive watch. So we want a thinner dive watch, we want exhibition case back, we want a more refined bracelet with screw-in links that screwed in from either side, and I think it was something about they've got this great diver's extension on their clasp, and it was something to do with more refinement of that. So they took rather than a poll, they actually produced this research study, which was quite so arguably their most loyalist of fans.
Yeah. That's actually a very smart way of doing it, because it's kind of saying, give us the concept or give us the parameters of what you would classify a good watch to be, and then we can still. Someone needs to be the leader in the project. You can't just have a group of people. Otherwise, you'll get nowhere and nothing will get done, and it'll just look. The result will be shit. Will be bad. And sorry. So the way that they've done that sounds very smart. They're essentially doing market research as opposed to saying we want you to create the watch. But Christopher Ward, I'm a massive fan of Christopher Ward. I think they're absolutely brilliant. But they are very keen to engage with their community, and so although I don't think you can use a community to create the perfect watch or whatever in that format, as a project to engage a community, I think it's brilliant. It's a very smart way of doing it.
It is interesting when a company has, when a company's, if you like, on the opposite, trying to do something the opposite. I've made no secret of the fact I'm quite a Breitling fan. We'll talk about that perhaps later. And they're a brand at the moment which is almost, if you're looking from the outside, they are almost deliberately poking their user base and saying, we are turning our back on you. We have heard exactly what you want, and we will not do it. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. And within the community, within the little Breitling communities, it's quite interesting watching the people that came to the brand during the time that people like Adrian would say the brand was like at its lowest ebb. They're feeling really rejected, very left out. They're feeling like their brand, the one that they stuck to while everyone else was poo-pooing them, is their own brand is turning on them. It's quite an interesting thing to watch, but sometimes it's what you've just got to do.
I went to a Breitling event a couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago, and it was very interesting how when you usually go to watch launches, it's typically just press. But at this Breitling event, the room was full of Breitling collectors. So and just Instagrammers, just not big Instagrammers, not celebrity Instagrammers, just like you and I, just people who have Instagram watch accounts about Breitling. So it was interesting how they engage them that way. But I think from a watch brand perspective, I'm more behind brands not listening to the community, because I think it's more exciting, and I want to see what these brands come up with, and perhaps more just a bezel change.
I'll tell you something. I've got an opinion about watches, and I'll freely share it. I run a YouTube channel. Never ask me to design one. I'm not a designer. All these people spouting their ill-informed, poorly educated, barely able to be articulated ideas about the perfect dive watch, they don't know shit about this. Get an expert to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you end up with the Homer Simpson car.
Yeah. I was thinking of using that in the thumbnail actually.
That's what bothers me in the which is defense aerospace, right? That's my area. And you read these articles about people that write about, this plane or this system, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You really don't understand how this is supposed to work. And it drives me, it drove me crazy. In fact, I actually wrote a piece one time on some new technology, and I put it out there, and it was published on one of the defense rags after it went through, this much review in my shot. But, it's, you don't understand how this new stealth plane is supposed to work. Here's what it does. And it just drives me a little crazy. And I think the same is certainly true of, the watch community. It's certainly true in the Seiko community where I am, in a way, right? I mean, we're more jaded. We're somewhat, like, what did Seiko do this time? This reissue of the Pogue. Are you kidding me? This is not even a chronograph. How dare you even attempt to do this? But nonetheless, I mean, you read the stuff like you were saying, Pete. Well, these people aren't watch designers. But everyone can be a critic now, I guess. That's certainly.
But I think that falls on the individual to have some personal responsibility to go and do at least 15 minutes of research before they take anyone's word for anything. You know what I mean? Like, I've had it, like, starting watching YouTube and all these other things. I had a lot of times, like, sometimes turn off the person's tone and really listen to what they were saying, because they were actually putting out good information. They They link sources, they link references, they give you a trail to follow instead of someone getting on, putting up a 20-minute video where they're just, and you know, they look soft-spoken and well-mannered, but there's nothing to back up anything they're saying. And if they're really trying to give me something, which is knowledge, right, which is free knowledge, because that's like the YouTube secret, right? You give away knowledge for free, and people will come and subscribe to your channel, right? But I want my knowledge to have something behind it. You know what I mean? Like, and if you, like, I'll talk about Federico. I love that dude. I love that dude because it's no BS. And I love that guy for the same reason I love Tim Masso. Listen, I get it if that watch was on a plane that skirted space and dropped puppies on a village and saved a bunch of people. That's a great story. But I'm watching Tim Masso because I don't care. I don't care. I got 7 minutes, right? My wife gets home in an hour. I did all the chores before I got, I go before. I want to learn about some watches, and I need to learn about them quickly. Tim Masso. And if Jack Forster goes over there, I know this is a different topic, but he goes over there, and then maybe on a Saturday morning when I'm drinking coffee, I get a half hour to hear some story that waxes poetic about the watch, and so be it. But too many people don't take their own personal accountability for how they go learn. And that allows them to blame everybody else for the mistakes they make, right? And so, like, to our audience, and I know a lot of them do, like, just take 5 minutes and take a look at who's telling you what. You'll instantly find out who's full of what and who's not.
Right? You guys are making me start second guess myself. I'm like about to commission this Australian Seiko modder to make my perfect dive watch, and maybe I'm just full of junk, and it's going to be terrible. This could be a terrible decision.
Think of it as an experiment. Am I any good?
Yeah, it'll be perfect for you.
Yeah,
right.
It's interesting what you say there, Jason. Just a really quick one. I ran a poll of on one of the websites about whether people try to actively cultivate their taste, that is, pay attention to where they're getting information from, only choose the information that is likely to take them where they want to be. Or on the other hand, again, using sort of military stuff, do they just turn all the filters off, accept anything that anyone else chooses to throw at them, and then let their taste develop naturally, in inverted commas? And you
have to know yourself. I mean, that's the thing for me. Yeah. At the end of the day, like, we've had enough side conversations. Pete, Todd, a new Todd, we probably will. Sam, like, I'm retired military, man. I have full belief in myself, but I'm humble enough to ask a question when I don't know something. And if I trust you enough to ask you, it's no skin off my back, and I don't care. Like, if the person that I'm asking has a problem with me asking that question, that problem's on them, bro, not on me.
Yeah. But one of the things I think so many people think that their taste is somehow a sacred thing, that it's not allowed to be shaped and it's got to develop naturally, forgetting that there are people outside of them who have no such scruples, and they are very deliberately using anthropologists and psychologists and neurologists to carefully design the messages that are going to shape your taste. And if you're not actively cultivating your own taste and thinking about, this is what I want to want and this is where I'm going to go, then someone else is going to do that for you, and you're going to like the watches they want you to like.
I think one of the challenges is that this is a very complex hobby. It's a hobby of so many layers, and all of our buying things that stand out on a watch. We can all look at, all six of us can look at one watch and we'll pull out different things that mean something to us, whether it's brand association, design, heritage, movement, the micro adjustment and the bracelet. We all have different elements. And the problem is, I think, well, this is what I felt like when I got into watches, when I realized I really liked watches, was I was focusing on the purchase as opposed to making the correct purchase. That doesn't make sense. Rather than focusing on learning about the purchase. So I was looking for someone else's validation or someone else's decision making to push me over the edge to make a purchase. And I get a scary amount of DMs and emails from people saying that they bought XYZ because of this video. I think, oh, that scares the hell. It makes me, I redo videos to make sure that I don't say certain phrases. I don't want someone to go out and buy a watch because of something that I say. I just want to add to the conversation and say my bit. But I think the challenge is it's kind of what Jason was saying about being sure about who he is. I think the buyer, it certainly took me a long time to figure out what I truly want from a watch. And so
I did that in the beginning too, though, Adrian. I mean, I did it too. Like maybe I went the military route too quick. Someone's like, oh, I was in the military, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that must be a totally cool watch, And as I've graduated, over time, I've realized I gotta do a lot more research on my own if I can handle something, or if someone I know has one, or if I just got to ask questions to people I trust and that I know that, won't tell me what I want to hear, but will tell me what I need to hear.
And that piece about trust, I think, is really important. And kind of just tapping back, to the previous Hodinkee thing. People don't trust Hodinkee. And the great thing about the landscape of watch media or watch critics, there are so many out there that we can pick and choose the ones that we do trust. Because I've never taken money from a watch company, but every video I do, I get comments saying, "Oh, how much did Oris pay to say this?"
Yeah,
I wish they did, because I want more Rolexes. but the point is, we can now pick and choose about who we do trust, and what commenters have the same style as us, and who do we trust what they say? Do we have enough knowledge? Now that I didn't used to like Federico when I first got into watch. I thought, man, you're boring as hell. You're just monotone. You're sitting behind desk talking. He's the only guy I watch now. I bloody love him. I think he's brilliant. So I think it's down to where people are within their watch buying journey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is your background. Like, I mean, I know Pete was in the military too, and like we were joking around the other day at work that we had some training that took 2 hours that you could have literally got done in 35 minutes. Like 35 minutes, I would have got the whole message. I would have practiced what you wanted me to do. It took 2 hours. And so I think that my path to get to the watch enthusiast hobby, when I saw Tim Masso the first time, it was the right amount of just technical data. Mm-hmm. And then Federico was the right amount of, no, they're going to do these markups, and that's why you shouldn't pay over MSRP for something. And the first time I heard Federico say that, I was by myself in the room and no one was around. I was like, what, this guy just tell me, because I thought like he broke the fourth wall, which, I mean, I guess he kind of did. And so I think that's part of it too. And I think that's why it's important, like we talked earlier, like about who you can trust, and then just to look a little deeper at who's telling you what on the screen, because they might be giving you some nuggets. You can't always just take how they say it. You got to really listen to what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want, got a few minutes left. I know we were going to talk about Geneva Watch Days that's coming up. Pete, this was one of your suggestions. I don't know if I've ever paid that close attention to Geneva Watch Days.
It's only been going. No, I think it's only been going 2 or 3 years. It's a COVID thing, or a post-COVID thing, where a bunch of brands that kind of had left, combination of post-COVID, post-Basel, a bunch of brands that had left Basel World, a bunch of brands that were finding that there was nothing much going on from a COVID point of view, kind of got together and said, how can we navigate having a show without a show? And so what they did was they came up with Geneva Watch Days. It's not a single show. It's not at some big convention center. So it's all distributed around Geneva. Each exhibitor has their own display area. The idea is it encourages you to move through the city and all that sort of thing as well. And yeah, it's I think it's interesting. I find it interesting because there's a couple of brands there I like. But it's a very narrow but very deep strata of the Swiss watch industry. At one end you're going to have Alpina and Frederick Constant telling you $100,000 to $200,000 pieces, and at the other end you've got MB&F and Grubel Forsey selling you pieces for $1 million, and every single spot in the middle, with a lot of brands that you don't necessarily hear a lot of, and I kind of like it because it does give some exposure to some brands that at a place like Watches and Wonders just get lost. No one bothers going to their booth. No one bothers to report on what they saw. It's a slightly more democratic show, and it's open to the public as well, which is something I always like. even though I'm in Australia and never going to get to go there, just the idea makes me feel good in here. Yeah, so I threw it out when we were talking about topics because I was curious about what was going to come. And, I've got some opinions on what I think Breitling might do, but it's just that. I'd be curious. I don't follow Oris much. So I'd be curious to think if anyone else has got an opinion on where Oris should go or where, on where they're going to go next. Oris is a really funny brand. We should do a secret. We should do one of these one day where it's like, what's your dirty little secret? The thing that you as a YouTuber, especially, you don't want people to know. And I'd be going, I'm not really into Oris or Casio. It's like, I feel like such an outsider.
No, that's true statement right there.
Someone left a comment on my recent Oris video saying, I've tried so hard to like these guys. It's like, you don't have to. It's okay.
I did.
I'm like that with Zenith. I just can't do it.
I tried really hard. I bought a Diver 65, and I've famously bought 50 or 60 watches. I've sold 3, and 2 of them are Orises. I just don't gel with them. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they're a terrible company. They're just not one that does anything for me.
They hit price points for me too. Like I struggle. Like I know Adrian's a Rolex fanboy. I'm a Tudor fanboy. And every time I see, even in the most recent video you had, Adrian, I was like, well, at £3,000, I'm looking back at a Tudor. I just can't. I can't make that jump, and it's just a struggle for me and for that brand. I know they're legitimate and they're a high quality brand. I just keep. I want a Tudor.
There's only one Rolex I want. The Explorer 2 white dot. I had to say it. It would have built up too much in my soul. I would have cried tonight. Dude, oh my god! Thank you.
I like it.
Thank you.
This is, you just get the Christopher Award and you'll be happy.
Okay, so let's talk about this.
I need to get hands on with that.
Let's talk about this.
I absolutely love this watch. It scratches the itch for me.
Me and Sam have talked about this, and it's the only CW I've seen. I've never held. Oh, I actually have held one of the first edition CWs. And I didn't think the logo was all that bad. But anyways, I felt like buying the only CW I've been interested in is that white one with the orange trident thingy, right? And being in the Navy, the whole trident thing's kind of weird to me if it doesn't have a nautical connotation kind of thing. But I just got the Kickstarter Crepus, and I'm going to get the white dial one because I'm going to wear I'm going to wear that for a while. Everyone I know that has one loves them. But I've never seen a CW that's floated my boat. And I'm just being honest. I know they're well-made watches. I listen to enough people that are credible to talk about them. But I think that's like anything, right? Like you talk about Casio and, I've only seen a couple of Tudors that I really dig. But that Explorer 2, I saw one in real life. I would drop that cash like that. I don't care.
I think it's important to remember, and this is an ongoing comment that I have on my channel is, where if I say something positive about a watch, someone will say, "Well, why don't you buy it?" So, well, but there's two appreciations. Mm-hmm. It's like the Reverso. I love the JLC Reverso, but it isn't me. It's not my sort of watch, but I adore it. And so I kind of feel like it's kind of like that Christopher Ward's Explorer 2 homage. Typically, I'm not a massive fan of homage watches, but sometimes people just do it right. And Christopher Ward just got it right. It was a tasteful amount of homage. It was executed brilliantly, and arguably is a better watch than the watch that it's homaging. It's 39 millimeters or 40 millimeters or something.
It's 39, 150 meters of water resistance, instead of 100, right?
And that movement's probably more robust. The build qualities, the bracelet's certainly going to be better than the original 16570 Rolex. And so, it's a homage that's been done well.
It's beautiful.
It's a very mature thing to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and that was the thing too. When the Tudor, the Black Bag Pro came out, I had to argue that I think this is actually a better looking watch, and it doesn't have the bulk that everybody was arguing about. Like this thing sits on your wrist like a dream, and you're like, for half the price, less than half the price, you can really get a beautiful watch.
Yeah, I just think it's a very mature thing to be able to sit down. And I think as watch enthusiasts, all of us should strive to get to the point to where we can look at something, appreciate a lot of that timepiece, but have it not be for us.
Yeah. This is my view on maybe this is my view on people on not people, but those like the homages that we know what they are, where they're really close to the actual. And I feel like you can appreciate the like. I could never afford, some of the the James Bond Submariner that he had in Doctor No or whatever. And I know there's like very close copies of it almost, but I can still appreciate that watch without having to own it. I can appreciate the watch for what it was without the need to buy like a copy of it. I think it like belongs. It belongs in its place. It's respected for what it is. It belongs in history for what it is. I think it needs to be. Whereas the homage where you're paying honor to a design, like that Christopher Ward kind of pays honor to an Explorer design. It's not trying to fool anyone that it is the thing.
Yeah, I think one of the great. Sorry, go Todd.
I was going to say one of the things that I had to come to grips with in my watch collecting journey is like, it's kind of like cars, right? Mm-hmm. I will never own a Lamborghini. I will never own a Ferrari, and I can appreciate it, but I'm certainly not going to buy the Ferrari kit that goes on a Volkswagen Beetle. You know, that's just ridiculous. And so it's the same thing, it's like, I look, I'm not going to pretend. And also I've sat across at lunches and dinners with business people where they actually have that watch. And I'm not going to sit there with the Pagani and like, oh yeah, no, this is not my watch. I just was checking that out. It would just be too embarrassing to do that for me personally.
But it's our responsibility as watch enthusiasts. Like, I have a buddy of mine who just all of a sudden decided he wanted to watch, because I guess I run my mouth about watches so much. And he really wanted a two-tone, because I was wearing my Zodiac, the 9271. Nice. Thank you. And he was like, oh, I really want a two-tone with the blue dial, right? And I'm like, well, there's all different kinds of stuff. Let's look. I gave him the Wristwatch Annual 2021, said, look at this, and then we can talk, right? And I made sure he knew, like, look, bro, I'm like kind of new at this, but I can point you in the direction to learn. So he went from a Rolex Submariner two-tone, and then I had to explain to him, like, you got to build a relationship. And this guy was a enlisted to officer guy in the Navy, so he doesn't have time for that. He's not going and shaking hands and kissing babies. And then he went down this rabbit hole and fell off a ledge where he's like, well, I'll just get this company in Japan makes these Rolex clones. I'm like, it's a fake watch, bro. And he's like, well, what would it matter? I said, one day you're going to be sitting across from some admiral who's going to have a real two-tone blue dial Rolex. You're going to have that clone, and he's going to know, because admirals have enough time to study. He's going to know it's fake, and you're going to just feel like crap. So he's like, so what should I do? I'm like, look. So long story short, he got a 2021 Tag Heuer Aqua Racer, blue with the horizontal texture on the dial. Yeah. We verified it. It had the right movement, the caliber 5, the edit 28, 24, Tag 2, whatever. And he got it for a good price from Chrono 24, and he loves it. And he's like, I don't know if I really want another watch. I'm like, you don't really need one, man. Like, you got like a nice little dive watch, and you got this Aqua Racer. You can do whatever you want to do. And I just felt like it was my personal responsibility to be like, if he had went Christopher Ward, I would have been fine with that. Yeah, dude, get that if they had one, right? That's a respectable watch company. But something that's saying like we make clones, like this isn't Star Wars, right? Like kind of thing. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, awesome!
And that tag is a great pick.
Yeah.
Oh, it was man.
Great.
It was snazzy. Say that.
Well, any final thoughts on anything we've discussed before we wrap it up?
I got one more thing. I'm gonna, if I can get a nickel back on Hodinkee.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I think I was looking at.
I made you full screen. Go on, Todd.
So I'll show you something. So we know that Hodinkee has lots of investors, right? And they announced all that. Ben Clymer did when they kind of expanded. But I'm curious on just how big they are and how much of this they necessarily contract out. But if you look at the beginning page, this is all the people involved in just this publication, which I subscribe to because I really like these. These are very well done. And the advertising is stuff I'm interested in. And it doesn't have a bunch of young, beautiful people in it that I could never become again. And not that I ever was, but I mean, Forster's on here, Ben Clymer's on here, but I don't know if these are really Hodinkee people or if these are the contract outfit. And this is a lot of work to build this thing, which has, all this incredible photography. I mean, it's really, really, really high-end stuff. And so what I'm wondering is, is this going to continue? Are they going to expand more on this? Because I don't know any other watch organization like a Hodinkee that puts out something of this magnitude. And so I'm wondering,
the brands themselves,
other than like when I show the Breguet, like we order the Breguet stuff, you get beautiful. It's on the same level as Breguet.
Watchinista is trying to do that now. Isn't that the thing they're doing? Watchinista, like they're trying to do that magazine style.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I think maybe. We talk because we love to talk about things being dead or killers or destroying something, and clearly we're going, way
super positive.
Literally destroyed. I'll buy that next week. I think maybe where we'll get to with Hodinkee as watch enthusiasts is they'll go from being a go-to site that we go to, that we check out every week, and we're curious. We go to every podcast. And it could boil down to, because now it's going to be subsumed within a whole bunch of lifestyle and buy this Eames chair and go on holiday to this resort. Mm-hmm. But maybe 2 or 3 times a year, they might distill down to give you that magazine. And all of those resources that are shilling you, like holidays and suitcases and insurance, will 3 times a year pay for a really cool magazine, and that's not bad. I'll take that. I'll go to Fratello and Monochrome and Watchinista day in, day out, and I'll get a Hodinkee magazine 3 times a year. That's not a bad outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone in the comments. It's been super active. Really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and taking the time to comment. Thank you to my panel. Thanks, Adrian, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, New
Todd. Nice to meet you.
We'll always rub with 2 Todds. It's not a replacement. It's not a Todd replacement clone. It's not a homage to Todd.
Oh, jeez.
I'm the homage of Todd S.
Don't make me judge you.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh, cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.